they're fighting history, the very slow, steady steps of Kodak. They're moving in the right direction. They need to move more.
There's no doubt that currently Kodak is too fat. They are essentially overstaffed and overbuilt.
George Eastman once said, "To make good goods requires experience and is a slow matter." And then he added, "I may be slower than somebody else, but I do the best I know how." Eastman said that more than a half-century ago, 50 years before microchips and lasers, Betacams and ASA 1000 film. But as you just saw in our opening sequence, the process of recording and transmitting images has been revolutionized, and the revolution continues each day, picking up speed with each technological advancement. Making good goods slowly just isn't good enough anymore. So how does Eastman Kodak plan to keep pace? Well, that in itself is a new notion. In Eastman's day, Kodak led the way. Kodak officials were invited to participate in this report, but they declined. There were, however, some other people who would talk to us about the Eastman Empire. And in the next half hour, we think it's important that you listen to what they have to say, beginning with a look at the challenge that Kodak faces in the marketplace today. It's a whole different ballgame for them because they used to be able to plan the obsolescence of their products.
Right. They used to have such control over the photography market that they could totally plan the product development and obsolescence cycle. They are losing that capability.
The idea that somebody else came out with something that Kodak didn't have, it broke the ice, so to speak. If someone has always used Kodak, maybe they're not anxious to change. But if there's a new product that comes in and they try it made by another manufacturer and it works, then they'll go back and they'll try the regular brands, the regular items in that same brand.
I don't think that on a long-term basis, Eastman Kodak's employment is really going to be growing significantly. I think that Kodak has got to become a much more productive organization than they are.
Labor costs as a percentage of your worldwide sales are currently much too high. And this is not only from a weaker sales situation than was originally anticipated when they were building the new plants. It's also from sharp increases in benefits, all kinds of benefit programs on a worldwide basis. The pace of life for Kodak is actually going to be accelerating. They're going to face new competition that they've never had to deal with before. And they're not all nice American companies that are non-unionized and want to take care of their employees. They also will probably have to look very carefully at their dividend policy for the shareholders who are really the owners of the company.
Well, I think it could be said that Kodak is a company which historically has produced excellent products technologically, but has not been the most aggressive marketer compared to a Procter & Gamble or an IBM or even an Apple computer in rapidly trying to change market share. Kodak has always been a very step-by-step building block by block market share rather than trying to do radical changes. It just isn't the nature of that company historically.
Photography has always been very, very capital intensive, so that the major companies in the industry, led by Eastman Kodak, had to add production, new plant and equipment a few years ago to be prepared for the demand that they foresaw in the 83 through 87 period. Now, essentially, I believe that demand forecast has been more than cut in half. Ergo, it's going to take much longer to use up the plant properly. Now, what has happened to demand? Why is the demand so much softer than people would have originally anticipated? I believe the reason for that is a tremendous proliferation in adult toys, largely coming out of the electronics industry. And here I'm not just talking about electronic cameras or videotape recorders. I'm also talking about personal computers. I'm talking about compact audio discs. I'm talking about all kinds of new exercise equipment even. Okay. So there are many, many things to buy today to satisfy the consumer's whimsy. Now, my feeling is that if photography has not yet shrunk as a percentage of disposable income that is spent, I believe.
During Kodak's boom years of the 60s and 70s, it steamrollered the Oriental competition with the Instamatic and later the 110 model cameras. Both were easy to use and widely accepted. But a combination of factors in the 80s have put the shoe on the other foot. It's now the Eastern industry that's flooding the market with the 35mm point-and-shoot cameras and faster, less expensive film. The industry experts say that if Kodak is to compete, it must learn the ways of the Orient, because in that learning comes more automation and higher productivity. The worst thing Kodak and its Rochester employees could do, the experts say, is to underestimate the Orient and to think that the threat is not there, because it is, and it is very real.
The Japanese can turn out products more cheaply than we can. They took the idea of robots and automation and ran with it. We dropped the ball.
Everybody else is just a little faster, a little more on the ball in the marketing area.
The fact that over the last 10 years, Fuji Photo's employment has not grown while their revenues have been up something like 3- to 4-fold. Kodak, I think, will try to do not of that magnitude, but to try to accomplish the same thing, that even after they're finished with this employment reduction program, which I would think would be finished by the end of 1985, even after that's complete, I think they're going to try to grow their business without growing their employment.
Their precision, attention to detail and dedication versus ours, I'd say that for the same quality workmanship, ours would cost more. Not because of a higher hourly rate, but I think their productivity is higher.
Here, research continues into the development of techniques which will allow an even coating of more than 10 emulsion layers on a single film base. These processes require an astonishingly high degree of precision.
And when you get an industry that has overcapacity, it seems to me that it becomes a market share game in a more dramatic sense than it was historically. Now, if you are going after market share, one of the ways to do it is not increase prices. That squeezes margins.
I think it has forced Eastman Kodak perhaps to advertise more aggressively than they had before. They don't have the same pricing flexibility that they would have under other circumstances, particularly in Europe. Europe is a very difficult market. Fuji is very aggressive in the European market. The dollar has been rising against European currency, so what Kodak would love to be able to do to offset that negative effect is raise their prices overseas. But since Fuji is not doing that, then that stops Eastman Kodak from being able to raise prices. And again, takes away pricing flexibility, and that sort of filters right down to the bottom line.
Kodak sources so much of their foreign product domestically. The strong dollar puts added pressure on their margins. It also makes it much more difficult for them to compete overseas.
We've already seen once with a major company in this town, Xerox, that was originally the low end of the copier market, which Xerox said they could ignore because it wasn't particularly profitable, that the Japanese companies servicing that industry have grown into major proportions and a very major threat to Xerox's profitability. The same could happen with Fuji.
All I can say is if it's a product that's going to contribute to man's ability to record and communicate, then it's a product that Fuji will probably be involved with.
Well, they're certainly at the stage now where they're big enough on a worldwide basis to act as a spur to Kodak more rapidly moving. But I wouldn't underestimate the long-term threat. I hope that Kodak does not underestimate that threat.
Up next, the transition from film to videotape. In the the past, Kodak's fortunes were won or lost in photo stores. In the future, they may well be won or lost in video stores like these. Kodak is banking a big stake of its future on Kodavision, a new form of video technology that replaces the traditional VHS and beta tapes with 8mm tape, a new format, a smaller format. Kodak says it's not concerned about the question of compatibility since 9 out of 10 Americans still have not purchased any kind of home video anyway. There is also concern about the price. The system will sell anywhere from $1,500 to $2,400 depending on accessories, so it's not exactly the kind of unit you'd give to Grandpa Charlie to take pictures of the kids. Unlike other Kodak pronouncements, this one has not been met with open arms. Questions of compatibility, the questions of price, have the experts divided evenly into two camps.
All due respect to Kodak, they may have some problems currently, but I don't think a company with that reputation and that kind of background is going to come out with a product that's going to damage their name.
I think Kodak has jumped into electronics at a faster pace than they were originally planning for defensive reasons. They must get sales.
Certainly, the price of the camera in the thousands of dollars is so unlike anything that Kodak usually makes as to be nearly laughable. I mean, you think in terms of a movie camera being $100 maybe, or $200, but certainly not thousands. And here is Kodak with this very expensive camera. But, as one Kodak official said, it puts our foot in the door.
How does this fit in with the amateur photographer philosophy of the past who could plunk down $50 and get a disc camera or a Brownie? Or it's a different thing now, isn't it? And aren't they ruling
Yes,
out?
it is different, but no, it's not quite different. We're throwing money around as a population at an alarming rate. If you followed what's happened in the newspapers over the last few days, even the federal government couldn't figure out, exactly how much we spent in the first quarter this year and for how much. I mean, apparently we just opened the bank and we're going out there buying everything, clothing, cars, everything's in season. This is a good time for an introduction.
We will be seeing smaller, lighter cameras which are less expensive and which you could give the average housewife to photograph the baby in the bath. The present camera is not the kind of a camera that she's liable to take into the bathroom for that purpose.
I would have hoped that they could hold the overall price down to $1,500, something like Beta Movie. But $1,900 is only $400 more. I'm taking a cavalier attitude towards the price. I figure if somebody wants it bad enough, they'll figure out where to squeeze it out of their budget.
Matsushita, who manufactures the 8mm system that Kodak is using in Kodavision, said recently in Japan, or was quoted as saying in Japan, that they would not bring the system out themselves because they did not feel that it was of sufficient quality compared to standard half-inch, and they did not feel that this system would be the next generation of video. Of course, that seems to be a terrible slap at Kodak, who they're supplying with the camera.
I think it's pretty brave for them to be the first entry into the 8mm video business. That's not a cautious move. This technology was available in Japan a year or two ago. Everybody was waiting to see who was going to be first. Here's Kodak saying, okay, we'll be first, we'll carry the ball. That's not being conservative at all. That's being quite brave. So maybe they have changed. I'm not aware of their former conservative philosophy, but if they had such a philosophy, they're not demonstrating it with this product. They're gonna introduce it here. They're taking most of the risk. Obviously, if the product becomes successful, all of the prime manufacturers in the Orient will follow through with similar product.
We can't resist change. Kodak is there. They're helping lead it in this case. Granted, they have a late start, but I think they're going to do a good job of marketing.
Comes the year 2000, most people have viewed Eastman Kodak as a growth company. Certainly as you move into the 1990s and towards the year 2000, without a movement, an aggressive movement into these newer products and these newer technologies, Eastman Kodak would be a declining company. And so they've got to be preparing now for that eventuality. And of course they are.
Up next, the countdown to Kodak 2000. It has to be an unsettling feeling for the people at Kodak to move from domination to competition. Tough not only for the people up there, but for the 1 in 7 working Rochesterians drawing a paycheck at the different Kodak factories around the city. The next 18 months will be the most critical for the company. The course that it plots is on new ground, new choices. But the analysts all have tremendous faith in this Eastman empire. There are short-term doubts, but the Eastman dry plate company has earned long-term optimism. The key word, the operative word, is diversification.
They are still primarily a company in the professional and amateur film markets. There's no question that both the blood analyzer and the copier do hold significant promise for more rapid growth over the next decade. The real key to whether Kodak's total profitability is really going to return to the days of the 60s when there was very rapid profit growth is really dependent on how many additional new products like that the Kodak R&D effort produces. If you can get a new product of that magnitude each year, then 5 to 10 years down the road, you've got a very different company, more akin to what 3M is now, not dependent on any one product in particular.
People still expect a yellow box when they buy a roll of film. And if you don't give them a yellow box, they want to know why. And if you tell them that the film they're getting is just as good as the yellow box, that is not sufficient. If it's just as good, let's buy the yellow box. So it has to be cheaper or better. And we have not yet proven that in any area there is another film which is better than Kodak. It appears to me to be a markedly different company, one that's going to be taking more gambles than before, one that perhaps will not spend as much time in research and development at the home base. But this is just based, frankly, on 1 or 2 years of observation from the outside. I think we'll have to give Mr. Chandler at least a couple more years before we make any decisions.
Year 2000, things will be dramatically different, that's right. The main things that are going to be changing, I mean, it's already started, this idea and the whole concept of imaging electronically as opposed to imaging on conventional film. It's not a major threat for the next few years, but semiconductor technology is advancing very, very rapidly. The price of electronic technology is dropping very quickly. And so at some point out in the future, not too distant future, perhaps as you move into the 1990s, electronics is going to be a very, very attractive alternative to conventional film imaging. I would be positive on Kodak stock for the next few years. The stock right now reflects major negatives. Everybody seems very pessimistic on Eastman Kodak. Earnings estimates have been coming down now for the last 2 or 3 years. The stock's been one of the worst, I guess in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, it's been the worst performing stock. And I tend to think that it's bottoming out here. I think that management recognizes the difficulties that they are facing. Strong actions are being taken to turn that around.
I really wish I had a crystal ball. The one thing I am sure of is that Eastman Kodak is going to be a very different company in terms of its profile. I think we will still consider it the leading photographic company. I think the margins in the photographic business will be considerably lower than they are today. And I think they will have a lot of other new businesses contributing to the bottom line. Now the problem is, how do we get from 1984 to 2000 without some pain, some tribulation? Will they be struck with good luck, or will they not make the right decisions, or will the world situation be against them? The one strength that Kodak has that no one can take away from them is they are rich.
Well, there's no question they're spending a lot of dollars on R&D, and as a percentage of sales, even more than companies like IBM and Xerox, which historically have had large R&D budgets. I would like to think that Kodak will become a company more like 3M, where there is a rapid introduction of new products, a wide variety of products, not a dependence upon any one product to provide the growth for the company.
As it heads toward the year 2000, is it safe to say that from your estimation, this is a very, very different company than George Eastman would have ever imagined it to be?
Oh, that's for certain.
Would he be pleased with what Kodak's doing, do you think?
I think he would be amazed, and I think he would indeed be pleased. Yes, I do.